Hey, what's up, internet? So I was, obviously I'm driving. I have to go throw some stuff out at the local recycle center. But, you know, I'm listening to the radio and I'm listening to Sirius, 127 Progress. And they are just, you know, besides themselves with joy, hugging each other with glee over the protest in Washington, the Women's March. Actually, they should call it the Some Women's March, because apparently if you hold the wrong views on abortion or any number of other topics, you don't count as a woman to be part of the marching. But whatever. Okay, fine. You know, look, the left has a long history of naming their ideology groups that way, in such a way that if you have a physical characteristic, then it's implied or assumed that you share their political opinion. And if you don't, then you are inherently marginalized and thrown away. So, for instance, if you know, and you get the same thing with other, you know, totalitarian leaning philosophies. So you get sort of things like, you know, the People's Liberation Army of wherever. You know, obviously, if you're a people and you're, you know, in China, then you are one of them, or you're a sellout. This is the Women's March on Washington, i.e., the implication is that this march represents all the views of right-thinking women who could possibly be there. And if not, then you are obviously a sellout or a wrong-thinking woman. But actually, what I wanted to talk about was, you know, you listen to the speakers, and you can throw this, you hearken back to 1984. You know, it's so funny because they talk about this woman who was just, you know, reading her sort of hate poetry slam or whatever the heck it is she was doing, because they all talk in that sort of sing-song meter, sort of easily packaged earworms for the crowd to chant to. And, you know, and there she is, you know, turning rainbows into suicide notes, and, you know, electroshock therapy is the new Holocaust, whatever. Anyway, they should sound angry and distressed and upset. They certainly use the words, we're angry, stressed, but they're not. They're filled with joy. These are people whose lives have no purpose if they're not angry, that they have no moral imperative to drive them if not for that feeling of righteous indignation and faux victimization. They have no dreams and aspirations of their own other than to shake their fist at power and be patted on the back by all their friends about how brave they were to get up in a throng of 10,000 or 100,000 under the eye of nobody who was going to hurt them. They're under no threat whatsoever. But if they imagine a threat, if they imagine Donald Trump as Hitler, if they imagine the society they're in as a totalitarian regime just waiting to crush them down, then their every action becomes inherently heroic, and every moment of their lives they are the antagonist in their very own, you know, Margaret Atwood story of resistance. And it's just ridiculous. And if you look at it, you can see the movie that's playing in their heads swirling around them, where, you know, the crowd that's chanting doesn't see, you know, Capitol Police officers around them, because the crowd themselves is likely to break out into violence and start flipping limousines and burning things and smashing Starbucks. Probably the Starbucks they went to that morning to get their $8 cup of fair trade coffee or whatever. No, they don't see that. In their mind, there are mile-high banners, and those very same police officers are just one wrong moment away from murdering them in the streets. And what was actually the juvenile chanting of a very angry mind living a delusion, that's you step inside the VR game that they're playing on their head, and they are on the steps of the Reichstag shaking their fist in Hitler's face, and yet they can do it here completely safely in Washington, D.C., in one of the freest democracies in the world. They would never go and actually put themselves in danger. None of these people will ever travel to Iran and chain themselves to the doors outside of a girls' school, risking getting their, whipped or beaten or stoned to death. None of them will step openly into London and march and fight against honor killing. That's dangerous, and they won't do it. They will instead bravely step in front of one of the safest law enforcement agencies of the world, one of the least overbearing governments on the planet, and they will shake their fist at the imagined boogeyman that they believe that Donald Trump represents. And then they will go home and swing by the Starbucks on their way and tweet each other on their iPhones about how much they set capitalism back and how afraid we were of them, and just then tweet each other, and they'll Instagram, and they'll just be so happy with each other, and they'll hug, and then they'll gather together and trade travel tips for how to pack light for your next protest, and they'll form their little coffee clutches about the whole thing. And the whole thing is, it's not a protest against anything, because it doesn't matter what they're protesting against. They can whip themselves into a frenzy about anything, and it doesn't matter whether it's the death of the last spotted owl, or their imagined belief that Donald Trump is advocating sexual assault. It doesn't really matter what it is. What matters is the feeling, the endorphin rush in their brain from getting together in a large group and shaking their fist and screaming about it all, and that feeling of community. And you look at their social media, and it's just all about that feeling. So when you hear them talk, understand that they're not actually reacting to the world as it is. They're reacting to the movie that's playing in their mind. And that movie requires a villain, and it requires a dystopia, because then they are the heroes for taking very common actions. And they will talk about how brave they were to be one of 100,000 people in Washington, D.C., and how special that makes them. Now, I'm all for solidarity of purpose. I look at the 50,000 people in the Trump arenas, and I know that they're also getting that feeling of solidarity and community. I get that feeling. We get, as humans, we get that feeling when our sports team wins a game. We're creatures built on this feeling. The difference is, nobody at the Trump rallies was under the impression the police were going to kick in the doors and murder them in their sleep, with the exception of the weirdos that think FEMA is going to ram them up in camps. The vast majority of Republicans are well aware of the fact that we live in a nation that allows us to express ourselves. In any case, I'm here. I'm going to drop this stuff off, and I may go live again in a minute on my way home, and then I'll package both of these together to when I upload them to YouTube, or when I go ahead and upload them to Periscope later on. So yeah. You know what? Actually, let's, yeah. All right, I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Bye-bye.